Hey everyone, this is Lisa from Life in Layouts and welcome back to day number 4 of March Madness. Today's page map sketch comes from April of 2021 and I did pull out my Kellybell Designs Light Cycle Run bundle to document some photos of us on Tron at Magic Kingdom. This particular page starter calls for a photo, which I'm not going to use. When I am finished with it, you're not even going to be able to tell that a photo should have been in that spot. I'm still having a ton of struggles with my mat. I really do hate new mats. I did end up turning my mat over and peeling off the images backwards. This tends to help with your images not curling since you are curling the mat and not the images, but I still struggled a lot. I did make the mistake of coloring my background, which is something that I suggested in my other video, which I'll link it here for you guys. I colored it yellow to kind of see the background and I forgot to change it back. So you see the yellow on the background of that paper. I just flipped it over and reprinted it on the other side. I even tried putting my shirt on the mat to take some of the stickiness away. It is still very, very sticky. I am still not using white cardstock this month, so I pulled out some black cardstock. It always amazes me how many shades of black I actually own. I did look through my blacks and I narrowed it down to these two. I brought in the black paper that I had printed out and I was trying to see which one would look better with it. I did end up going with that shiny black paper. Now I'm going to be using images from the page starters, a lot of the images from the kit itself, and then a couple of images from the snippets. I will link all of those below for you guys if you would like to get more details on each one of them. That black gear piece that has the blue in the center of it, I actually put a white border around it and then colored that white border in with black, and I love the way that that turned out. I think that it changed the look of that embellishment completely. I did pull out my black ink and inked up all of the edges. Especially with the black embellishments, there were a stark difference with that white when it didn't cut out properly. So the ink really helped. And then I also did pull out my blue ink and inked up several of the pieces as well. I feel like I have learned so much since I have started using the digital content. When I first printed out this collection for another Tron layout that I did, there were lots of mistakes that I made and I have since learned from that. I will post that Tron video here so that you guys can check it out. Adding the white background to these images really does make it look more like I had purchased the images as opposed to them being printed out. I know that the images are mainly used for digital content and so they're not wanting a white border, but I am loving that look on these images. So for the left-hand side of the paper, I cut out this grid paper and my thought process was that I would cut it in half because I do not have a wide format printer. And I'm going to cover up that middle section with the page starters. So if you have a standard printer, don't shy away from the digital contents because there are so many ways that you can make your paper look like it's 12 by 12. Or you can just figure other ways out to use this paper. I am loving all the different ways that I'm able to cover up the fact that I don't have a wide format printer. So over on the far left-hand side, I'm going to have that page starter, and then I'm also going to have the 4x4 photo to cover up that seam. Then right next to it, I'm going to have a 4x6 photo. And then on the right-hand side, I'm going to do something very similar. I'm going to cut this paper in half. I didn't even do a full 11 inches because I knew that I was going to have my photos over on the right as well as some other embellishments. So I'm just adding this paper to the top and bottom. You can see that I have a pretty large space there, but with the 6x4 photos that I'm going to add down, that covers a majority of it. And then I'm going to add a couple of embellishments to cover up the rest of that seam. For this white piece of paper, I did use almost the entire sheet of paper. There was a little piece at the end, which I was okay with because I'm going to end up having 3 inches on the left-hand side of the layout and 7.5 inches on the right-hand side of the layout. As you can see, I'm adding the ribbon to the bottom. I'm going to put an embellishment in the center of that, so that's going to cover the entire 12 inches. And then on the top there, I have the arrows that I welded together in the Silhouette Studio to make several of them, and then I did back them in the white so that it looks like a longer piece. Once I get the paper down on the layout, then I'm going to start to work on the page starters. I really enjoy taking the page starters as a base and then taking other pieces from the kit and adding it on top of it with some dimension. So for this particular one, I started out with that black flower. I did use my poker tool to round the edges, and that's going to help give it a little extra dimension. And then I added some fun foam behind the flower so that it would pop up on the page starter. I did the same thing for the blue flower. For the black flower, I did roll them outward, and then for the blue flower, I rolled them inward, so it looks like the blue flower is popping up, whereas the black flower looks like it's kind of popping down. And then I added the smaller teal flower, doing the same technique of adding those pop dots, and that one was so tiny, and I still used a ton of pop dots on it. I also added the black star. Now that one I did not roll like I did with the flowers. I just added the foam adhesive to the back of it and added it right to the page starter. Now down where the photo is supposed to be, which is where that white square is, I'm going to add an additional embellishment that says welcome to the grid. I do use some foam adhesive on the back of that, and I have 2 size foam adhesive from scrapbook.com. The first one is 1mm and the second one is 2mm, and I like having those different sizes because it provides different heights on the page starter. And then I'm going to add some adhesive to the back of the entire page starter. Before I put that down, I realized that I needed to have my 6x4 photos on the left-hand side because I wanted to make sure that those lined up with the 4x4 photo that's going to be on the right-hand side. So I get the 6x4 photos down on the right, I go ahead and add my 4x6 photo of us outside of Tron, and then I'm going to add the 4x4 photo. Unfortunately, my video cut off here, so I decided to slow down the video so that you could see how that page starter covered up the entire seam on the left-hand side along with my 4x4 photo. I also ended up adding those arrows to the right-hand side, and I had them come off the page so that it would also cover up the seam on the right-hand side. So at this point, it looks like I have 2 12x12 sheets of paper on either side of my layout. I then pulled out the ribbon from the collection, and I'm going to add a piece to the top and bottom, covering it up with the white paper so that you again cannot tell that I don't have a wide format printer. Then I'm going to do the same thing with this blue ribbon that's going to be underneath my photos. I knew that I was going to put an embellishment cluster kind of in between the photos, very similar to where the sketch calls for. So I was trying to figure out where that was going to be so I knew exactly where to cut that pattern paper so that I could add it down on the left and right of the layout and then put this embellishment cluster in the center of it. So I went ahead and added the gear piece down, and then on the top I'm going to add the embellishment piece that says initiate ride sequence, which I think was perfect for these ride photos that are on the right hand side of the layout. I plan out my digital layouts on the Silhouette software, and I'm going to show you guys that probably next month after March Madness is over. I wanted to show you guys how I plan things out, how I size things, but even after I plan it out, sometimes it doesn't always translate well to the layouts. So sometimes I do have to change it up a little bit, which that is perfectly fine. I just like having that starting point so that I'm not printing out extra pages that I'm not going to use, especially with digital content. I don't want to be storing a lot of this paper that I've printed out. I want to print out exactly what I'm going to be using, and by planning it out, it really does help me have very little waste at the end. I did add a floral over to the left-hand side using that same technique of rolling it and then adding it up on the foam adhesive. And then I also added a prepared to be digitized. That particular digital image actually has a piece that comes off to the left of it, but it was going to be way too small to cut out, and even with the background, it just didn't look right. So I just used my knife tool in the Silhouette software, cut off that piece so that I just had the main piece on it. Over on the right hand side, I'm going to add 3 florals to that cluster as well. And I used the same florals that were on the page starter that's over on the left hand side. And then I added a tag that says Team blue user. And that tag there I also backed with the white. Now that I have all of the digital elements down on the layout, I thought that it would be pretty awesome to bring out some of my bling. I still have a ton of bling left. I went through and pulled out anything that I could use in the blue as well as the white. This particular bling came from Michael's in like their dollar spot section. I've had these forever, but I feel like every time I go into Michael's, they still are selling these in their like cheaper area. I don't think they're $1 anymore. I think they're like $2 or $3, but still a pretty good reasonable price. And they work really well with this collection. I added a ton of bling throughout the entire layout. Anywhere that I saw a dot on any of the embellishment pieces, I thought, you know what, I can add a bling to that. So over on the right hand side, I did add 2 little blue blings to the initiate ride sequence. For the white flower, it actually has a bling in the center of it, so that was a perfect place to add a blue bling there. Then I decided to zoom in so that you guys can see, because I'm going to be adding some very tiny blings. I'm actually going to kill a sheet of blings, which is impressive because I feel like they're always hanging around. But again, on that page starter, anywhere that there was a tiny little dot, I went ahead and added a bling to it, as well as adding bling anywhere that I thought would fit well. For that area down at the bottom, you can see where there is that white area where a photo is supposed to be, and I'm going to add a bling floral as well as several other bling pieces. And again, you're not even going to be able to tell that a photo is supposed to be in that area. So when you're looking at these page starters, there's usually like 2 that don't have a photo and then 2 or 3 that do have a photo. Don't let the ones that have photos deter you. You could absolutely still use those and add additional embellishments to it. The floral bling that I added down is the one that I'm actually going to kill. There was a bunch of little florals and then really tiny bling pieces. After I got all of the florals down, I thought, you know what, I might as well go ahead and get these tiny little blings down. So I'm just adding them anywhere that I think that they would look good. And I am going to show you guys that I did actually kill this little package. It's a small one, but it is now out of my collection and on a layout. I also decided to pull out some of my swirly bling, and I'm going to add that around. These swirls are always so large, so I usually tend to cut them down and add them several places around the layout. I just use my X-Acto knife, cut them directly on the backing, and then pull them off and add them around the layout. So I'm going to take this one bling and add it to 3 different places on the layout. Over on the far left, I'm going to add 2 of them behind that flower, almost kind of resembling leaves, like coming out of the flower. Over on the right hand side, I am going to add a little bit of a larger one since I don't have a lot of embellishments there. I really just have that initiate ride sequence piece. And then down at the bottom, I'm going to add a smaller one. These particular photos are obviously from us riding Tron. This was the first time that my sister rode Tron. So in the photos is myself, Eli, and my sister. We took a photo before we got on the ride. And then over on the far left, that 4x4 photo is of my sister and Eli. They have the light cycle run bikes outside the ride for you to take photos with, but also there are people that need to test it out to see if they can fit, because there is a size limit, and if you can't get the bike to pull down on yourself, then you have to ride a different one. So it gives you that opportunity to try it out before you get in line. I then decided to pull out my liquid glass, and I added that to some of the centers of the flowers. And then that is it for this video. Here is my final layout as well as some close-ups. I did do my journaling offline, and it says, "The Tron universe enveloped Jennifer, Eli, and I. It felt like we were truly part of the futuristic landscape, speeding through the grid on light cycles, and for those exhilarating moments, the outside world just faded away, leaving only the excitement of the ride." All right, if you enjoyed this video, if you wouldn't mind giving me a thumbs up, I would really appreciate it. If you haven't done so already and you want to see more double page layout inspiration, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you have a scrappy day.